I'm Rachel, 32 years old, and I built a $20 million business from nothing. For years, I supported my family financially, giving them everything they could ever want. Then one day, my father looked me in the eyes and said, "Leave, you lowlife." Those words shattered my world. Broken and betrayed, I made the hardest decision of my life. I left, but I didn't just leave. I moved somewhere they could never reach. Before I dive into how my own father broke my heart after I gave everything to my family, let me know where you're watching from and hit that subscribe button if you've ever felt betrayed by someone you loved. I grew up in a small Midwest town called Millfield where everyone knew everyone. We weren't always struggling financially. My childhood memories include a comfortable house, family vacations, and birthday parties with plenty of presents. That all changed when I was 12. The auto plant where my father worked for 15 years closed down, shipping all operations overseas. That single event transformed our family forever. Dad couldn't find another job that paid nearly as well. Mom, who had been a part-time school secretary, suddenly took on multiple minimum wage jobs, waitressing in the morning, cleaning houses in the afternoon, and cashiering at the local grocery store on weekends. Despite their efforts, bills piled up and the atmosphere at home grew increasingly tense. I discovered my entrepreneurial spirit early. At 13, I was running the most profitable lemonade stand in the neighborhood, strategically setting up near the community pool during summer. By high school, I was selling handmade jewelry to classmates and even some teachers. My little business brought in enough money to help with groceries sometimes, which made me feel proud. Despite our financial challenges, I excelled academically. I studied twice as hard as my classmates, knowing education was my ticket out of poverty. The effort paid off when I earned a partial scholarship to State University. It wasn't enough to cover everything, so throughout college I balanced a full course load with part-time jobs. I worked at the campus bookstore, delivered food, and even started a small essay editing service for fellow students. While I was fighting to build a future, things continued deteriorating at home. Dad's unemployment stretched from months into years. His initial determination to find work gradually morphed into bitterness, then hopelessness. He started drinking more, first just weekends, then weeknights, eventually starting most days with just a little something to take the edge off. The verbal abuse followed the same pattern. Occasional outbursts after bad job interviews became regular tirades directed at Mom, my younger siblings, and me. My brother Jason was 16 and sister Kelly 14 when I left for college. I felt guilty abandoning them to the increasingly toxic environment, so I called home twice a week and sent what little money I could spare. During holiday breaks, I'd take them out for meals, just to give them a peaceful few hours away from Dad's unpredictable moods. When I graduated with my business degree in 2014, the economy was still recovering from the recession. Despite my excellent grades and internship experience, corporate job offers were scarce. After 6 months of rejections, I made a decision that would change everything. Instead of continuing to chase jobs that weren't there, I would create my own. With just $3,000 saved from my campus jobs, I launched an online boutique selling vintage-inspired clothing. I worked out of my tiny studio apartment, storing inventory under my bed and shipping packages from my kitchen table. Those early days were incredibly lonely and stressful. Sometimes I'd go entire weeks barely speaking to anyone except courier drivers and customer service representatives on the phone. My online boutique struggled through its first year. I barely made enough to cover costs, let alone pay myself a salary. Then came the pivotal moment that would transform everything. While researching sustainable packaging options, I discovered a massive gap in the market for affordable, eco-friendly home products. People wanted to make environmentally conscious choices, but couldn't afford the premium prices most green brands charged. I saw the opportunity immediately. Within weeks, I pivoted my business, completely rebranding as Eco Living with the tagline, "Sustainable Living for Everyone." To fund this new direction, I took out personal loans and maxed out 2 credit cards, a terrifying financial risk that kept me awake most nights. The first 6 months were brutal. I worked 18-hour days handling everything from website design to customer service to packing orders. My apartment transformed into a warehouse with boxes stacked to the ceiling. I showered at the gym because my bathroom was filled with inventory. Then came the breakthrough we desperately needed. A popular environmental blogger featured our affordable bamboo kitchen set in a sustainable products under $30 roundup. The post went viral, crashing our website for 12 hours. When we came back online, we sold out of 6 months' worth of inventory in just 3 days. That single exposure changed everything. I scrambled to restock, negotiate with suppliers, and hire my first employee, a college student who helped package orders part-time. Within 3 months, we moved operations from my apartment to a small warehouse space. By the end of our first year as eco-living, we'd hit 1 million in sales. Our growth continued at an astonishing pace. I built the business on 3 principles: genuine sustainability, honest pricing, and exceptional customer service. We expanded from kitchen products to bathroom, bedroom, and eventually every room in the house. Each new product line sold better than the last. Year 2 brought in 3 million in revenue. Year 3 reached 5 million. By year 6, we were a $20 million company with 58 employees, international shipping, and partnerships with major retailers. Throughout this period of explosive growth, I rarely took a day off. I missed friends' weddings, canceled vacations, and had exactly 0 serious relationships. My social life consisted of industry networking events and the occasional dinner with my small circle of friends who hadn't given up on me yet. The sacrifice felt worth it when I bought my first home at 27, a modest 3-bedroom house that represented everything I'd worked for. But the true joy came from finally being able to support my family financially. I paid off my parents' mortgage, purchased them a new car, and set up college funds for my siblings. After years of struggling, I could finally give back to the people I loved most. As my business grew, so did my financial contributions to my family. What started as helping with basic bills evolved into fully supporting their lifestyle. When my parents' roof leaked, I didn't just pay for repairs. I bought them an entirely new house in an upscale neighborhood across town. The new house featured everything my parents had always dreamed of: granite countertops, hardwood floors, a 3-car garage, and a backyard large enough for my mom's gardening ambitions. I expected the improved living situation would help my father's mood and drinking problems. It didn't. Despite no longer needing to work, Dad's unhappiness persisted. He spent most days watching TV in his new leather recliner, criticizing everything from local politics to the neighbors' landscaping choices. Mom, always the peacekeeper, developed an elaborate system of walking on eggshells around him. She'd text me warnings about his mood before I visited and made excuses for his behavior when he lashed out. "Your father is just adjusting," she'd say, after he'd refused to thank me for yet another gift. "He's proud, you know. It's hard for him to accept help, especially from his daughter." My siblings responded differently to my financial support. Jason, now in college studying engineering on my dime, began expecting regular allowance increases for increasingly extravagant expenses: a newer car, spring break trips to Cancun, designer clothes. Kelly, while more appreciative, developed a concerning habit of calling me in tears whenever she faced even minor financial obstacles, expecting immediate solutions. Family gatherings became awkward affairs centered around money. Conversations inevitably turned to what I could provide next. Christmas and birthday gifts were scrutinized with subtle or sometimes not so subtle expressions of disappointment if they weren't expensive enough. The worst part was that no one ever asked about me, how I was feeling, if I was happy, whether building a business was fulfilling. I had become an ATM with a pulse. I tried establishing boundaries. When Jason demanded I pay for his girlfriend to join his Europe trip, I gently explained it wasn't reasonable. He didn't speak to me for 3 weeks. When I suggested my father consider therapy for his drinking, he ranted about my superiority complex and how I thought money could solve everything. My therapist, Dr. Carter, whom I started seeing for stress management, pointed out the unhealthy dynamics. "Rachel, you're enabling dependent behavior," she said during one session. "Your family is treating you like a resource, not a person. Have you considered setting clearer financial boundaries?" I knew she was right but couldn't bring myself to implement her suggestions. The guilt was overwhelming. I remembered too vividly the years of struggle, my mother's exhaustion after working 3 jobs, my father's humiliation at being unemployed. How could I withhold help when I had more than enough to give? So I continued supporting them, even as resentment built inside me. I managed the growing emotional toll by focusing on work, pushing myself harder, expanding the business further. Success became my coping mechanism. The more I achieved, the more I could justify the increasingly dysfunctional family dynamics. By my 30th birthday, I was emotionally exhausted, but still unable to break the pattern. Little did I know the decision would soon be made for me in the most painful way possible. The opportunity came unexpectedly. Greenlife Brands, a publicly traded company specializing in sustainable consumer goods, expressed interest in acquiring Eco-Living. Their initial offer was $35 million, a figure that would secure financial freedom for the rest of my life. After weeks of negotiations and due diligence, we reached tentative terms. I would sell 70% of the company while retaining creative control and a board seat. The deal would provide immediate cash plus performance-based payouts over 5 years. My loyal employees would receive generous retention packages. I decided to share the news with my family over dinner at their house, the house I had purchased. I prepared a special meal, bought an expensive bottle of champagne, and rehearsed how I would explain this incredible opportunity. "I have some exciting news," I announced after dessert, unable to contain my smile. Greenlife Brands wants to acquire Eco-Living. The deal would mean long-term security for all of us. I explained how the acquisition would work, emphasizing that I'd still be involved in the company, but would finally have time for a personal life. I shared dreams of potentially traveling, maybe even dating, after years of putting my love life on hold. My father, who had been unusually quiet during dinner, suddenly slammed his fist on the table, causing dishes to rattle and wine to spill. His face flushed dark red. "So that's it. You're cashing out and abandoning your responsibilities," he demanded, voice rising with each word. Confused, I tried explaining that nothing would change regarding their support. If anything, the deal would provide even greater security. "That's not the point," he shouted. "You think you can just build something and then walk away when it suits you? That's always been your problem. No loyalty, no commitment." His words felt like physical blows. No loyalty, no commitment. I had sacrificed my 20s building a business that supported our entire family. "Dad, I've been completely committed to this family," I said, fighting to keep my voice steady. "Everything I've done has been to provide for all of you." "Provide?" he scoffed. "You throw money at us and think that makes you some kind of savior. Meanwhile, you're off playing big-shot businesswoman, too important to spend actual time with your family." Mom interjected weakly. "Frank, please. Rachel has been very generous." "Generous?" he cut her off. "She's been controlling us with her money, making us dependent on her so she can feel superior." I looked around the table, searching for someone to defend me. Mom stared at her plate. Jason examined his phone with sudden interest. Only Kelly met my eyes, her expression torn between sympathy and fear of contradicting our father. "I've never tried to control anyone," I said, tears threatening. "I just wanted to help, to make things easier after all the hard years." That's when he said it, the words I can still hear in my nightmares. "Leave, you lowlife," he spat, eyes cold with contempt. "You think you're better than us now with your fancy business and your millions? Go play pretend with your rich friends and leave us alone. We managed before you, and we'll manage after you're gone." The room fell completely silent. Even Jason looked up from his phone, shocked by the viciousness in Dad's voice. I stood slowly, legs unsteady. "I've given everything to this family," I whispered. "Everything." "Nobody asked you to," he replied coldly. I looked to my mother one last time, silently pleading for her to say something, anything. She kept her eyes down, hands nervously folding her napkin into smaller and smaller squares. I grabbed my purse and walked out, each step feeling like I was moving through water. In my car parked in the driveway of the house I had bought them, I finally broke down. Sobs tore through my chest as years of suppressed pain erupted at once. Through tears, I called Sophia my best friend since college and now Eco Living's operations director. He said, "I'm a lowlife," I choked out when she answered. "After everything I've done, he told me to leave." Sophia listened to the whole story, then said something that cracked my world open even further. "Rachel, I need to tell you something I should have said years ago. Your family has been taking advantage of you. The constant demands for money, the guilt trips, the emotional manipulation, none of that is normal or healthy." She described conversations she'd overheard between my siblings at company events, jokes about the Rachel Bank, and plans to ask for more. She revealed that my father had called the office multiple times demanding information about company finances and my personal accounts. As painful as Sophia's revelations were, they crystallized something I'd known deep down, but couldn't admit my relationship with my family had become profoundly unhealthy. I'd been buying their love with financial support, and they'd been selling me an illusion of family bonds that shattered the moment I suggested any change. That night, staring at my ceiling until dawn, I made the hardest decision of my life. I moved methodically over the next 2 weeks as if operating on autopilot. First, I met with my financial advisor to secure my assets and create a comprehensive plan. Then I contacted my attorney to ensure the acquisition negotiations wouldn't be affected by my personal situation. While researching international business opportunities that might benefit eco-living post-acquisition, I discovered New Zealand's thriving sustainability sector. The country's commitment to environmental protection aligned perfectly with my company's values. More importantly, its remote location and strict privacy laws offered something I desperately needed: distance and security from my family's emotional manipulation. I finalized the acquisition deal for $28 million, less than the initial offer but with better terms for creative control and employee protection. The paperwork was signed exactly 17 days after my father told me to leave. With my financial future secured, I focused on arrangements that would both protect my family's basic needs and protect me from further exploitation. I established education trusts for both Jason and Kelly with specific conditions. Funds could only be used for tuition books and reasonable living expenses. No luxury cars, no exotic vacations, no shopping sprees. For my parents, I set up automatic payments for their mortgage, utilities, and healthcare premiums, enough to ensure comfort, but not extravagance. These arrangements would continue regardless of my involvement, managed by my financial team with strict guidelines. Meanwhile, I searched for properties in New Zealand, eventually finding a secluded beachfront home on the South Island. The 3-bedroom house sat on 5 acres with private beach access and mountain views. The listing photos showed floor-to-ceiling windows that framed the ocean like living artwork. It was listed at just under $2 million, a reasonable price for the peace it promised. I purchased the property sight unseen, wired the funds, and began the process of obtaining a business investment visa. My status as a successful entrepreneur with significant capital to invest made the immigration process surprisingly straightforward. As my departure date approached, I wrote individual letters to each family member. To my siblings, I explained my decision while leaving the door open for future relationship on healthier terms. To my mother, I expressed my love alongside my disappointment in her failure to stand up for me. To my father, I wrote simply, "I hope someday you understand that love shouldn't come with conditions. I'll always be your daughter, even from the other side of the world." The night before my flight, I met with Dr. Carter for a final session. "What you're doing isn't running away," she assured me when I expressed doubt. "It's setting a boundary when all other boundaries have failed. Sometimes physical distance is the only way to break unhealthy patterns." My last day at the U.S. office was bittersweet. The employees who had become like family threw a surprise goodbye party. Sophia presented me with a photo album documenting our journey from my apartment operation to the multi-million-dollar company we'd built together. I promised to stay involved remotely and return for quarterly visits. As I boarded the plane the following morning, I felt equal parts heartbreak and liberation. 22 hours and 3 flights later, I landed in Queenstown, New Zealand, ready to begin again. Seeing the southern Alps for the first time as my plane descended into Queenstown took my breath away. Jagged peaks dusted with snow surrounded a brilliant blue lake. It looked like something from a fantasy movie, not a real place where real people lived. The drive to my new home along winding coastal roads revealed one stunning vista after another. When I finally arrived at my property exhausted but exhilarated, I stood on my private beach watching waves crash against black volcanic sand. The air smelled of salt and possibility. Those first weeks were a roller coaster of emotions. One moment I'd feel profound peace watching the sunrise from my deck, the next, I'd be overwhelmed with doubt questioning my decision to move so far from everything familiar. Grief would hit unexpectedly, while unpacking kitchen items or finding an old family photo tucked between books. I established a small satellite office in Queenstown to manage my remaining business interests and connect with local sustainable product manufacturers. New Zealand's entrepreneurial community welcomed me, warmly fascinated by the eco-living story and eager to explore collaborations. My neighbors, sparse as they were along that remote coastline, introduced themselves with home-baked goods and invitations to community events. No one knew about my family drama or my net worth, and the anonymity felt refreshing. For the first time in years, people wanted to know me, not what I could do for them. Meanwhile, my family's reactions played out exactly as I'd anticipated. The first week brought dozens of calls and texts, ranging from confused to furious. My father left voicemails alternating between rage, "How dare you abandon this family," and manipulation, "Your mother is sick with worry." Jason demanded to know why his latest tuition payment came from a trust rather than directly from me. Kelly sent tearful messages about feeling abandoned. I responded to each message, once explaining my decision calmly and directing them to the appropriate financial contacts for questions about the trusts or automatic payments. Then I stopped engaging with the emotional manipulation. The money continued flowing as arranged, and gradually the desperate messages decreased. My father's threats became hollow when he realized the house payments would continue regardless of whether I answered his calls. My siblings' attitudes shifted when they understood the education trusts were irrevocable but conditional on their academic performance. Despite maintaining these financial supports, I struggled with guilt. Years of conditioning had taught me that my value to my family was measured in dollars provided. Dr. Carter and I continued therapy sessions via video calls, working through my distorted sense of responsibility. "Your worth isn't determined by what you give," she reminded me repeatedly. "Healthy relationships are reciprocal, not transactional." 6 months into my New Zealand life, my family made a concentrated effort to locate my exact address. Jason contacted Sophia at the main office claiming he needed to send important family documents. My mother emailed, saying she wanted to visit just to make sure I was okay. These attempts at boundary violation confirmed I'd made the right decision. I changed my phone number, limited contact to email only, and instructed my staff never to share my location details. The physical distance provided the safety I needed to establish emotional boundaries I'd never been able to maintain while living closer. As New Zealand's stunning summer arrived, I found myself starting to heal. I rediscovered passions long buried under work responsibilities and family obligations. I took up painting again, capturing the dramatic landscapes on canvas. I explored hiking trails through native forests and along coastal cliffs. For the first time in a decade, I had space to remember who I was beyond my business achievements and family role. 1 year after arriving in New Zealand, I stood on my deck watching the sun rise over the Pacific Ocean, a ritual that had become sacred to me. The pain that once felt unbearable had transformed into something else, not gone completely but changed into a kind of strength I never knew I possessed. My days had found a natural rhythm far removed from the frantic pace of my previous life. Mornings began with coffee watching the waves, followed by a few hours of remote work maintaining my creative input at Eco Living. Afternoons were spent on a new venture, a mentorship program supporting local women entrepreneurs with sustainable business ideas. The program had started almost accidentally after I met Mia, a brilliant young woman with plans for biodegradable packaging made from seaweed. Over coffee, I offered some business advice, which led to regular mentoring sessions. Soon, other women joined, and we created a formal program with funding workspace and professional development. Therapy continued to be an essential part of my healing journey. Dr. Carter helped me understand how childhood patterns had shaped my adult relationships, particularly my tendency to assume emotional responsibility for others. I learned to recognize the difference between generosity and self-sacrifice, between supporting loved ones and enabling dysfunction. My relationship with my family evolved slowly. Kelly was the first to reach out in a meaningful way, sending an email that contained no requests or complaints, just genuine questions about my life and an update on her studies. Our correspondence gradually became regular, and I sensed real growth in her understanding of healthy boundaries. Jason took longer. His initial anger at the trust restrictions eventually gave way to grudging respect when he realized the structure had actually helped him focus on his education. By the end of his first post-graduation year, he'd secured an engineering position without my intervention and sent a brief but sincere note of thanks. My father remained the most resistant to change. His communications oscillated between hostile silence and half-hearted attempts at reconciliation whenever he wanted something beyond the established support. Then, 9 months into my New Zealand life, he suffered a minor heart attack. During his recovery, he sent an email that contained something close to an apology. "I may not have always shown it properly," he wrote, "but I am proud of what you've built. Your mother misses you terribly." It wasn't a full acknowledgement of his behavior, but it was more reflection than I'd ever received from him. I responded with compassion, but maintained my boundaries. I would not return to the old patterns regardless of health scares or tentative apologies. My mother began calling monthly, our conversations gradually becoming less superficial. She never directly addressed her failure to defend me that fateful night, but small comments suggested growing awareness of her enabling role in Dad's behavior. As my personal life stabilized, I found myself open to possibilities I'd previously dismissed. Jack entered my life at a local business conference where I was speaking about sustainable entrepreneurship. An architect specializing in eco-friendly designs, he approached me afterward with thoughtful questions that turned into dinner conversation, then regular dates. Unlike previous relationships that I'd always subordinated to business and family obligations, my connection with Jack developed naturally and healthily. He had his own successful career, close relationships with his well-adjusted family, and a calm confidence that never demanded proof of my commitment through sacrifice. Spending time with Jack's family showed me what normal family dynamics look like. Disagreements resolved through conversation, rather than manipulation, support freely given without scorekeeping, celebrations that focused on connection, rather than material expressions of love. Perhaps the most meaningful development came through the foundation I established for young entrepreneurs from disadvantaged backgrounds. The Rachel Wilson Foundation provided not just funding, but comprehensive support, including mentorship, therapy resources, and community building. Each time I met with our recipients, I saw reflections of my younger self. Determined, talented individuals whose difficult family circumstances had both challenged and strengthened them. Looking back over the journey that brought me to this peaceful beach on the other side of the world, I recognize now that moving to New Zealand wasn't running away. It was running toward the life I deserved. Sometimes the greatest act of love is creating enough distance to see relationships clearly, and the greatest courage is choosing your own well-being even when others label it selfishness. Have you ever had to make a difficult choice between family obligations and your own well-being? I'd love to hear your stories in the comments below. If this resonated with you, please hit that subscribe button and share this video with someone who might need to hear that it's okay to choose themselves sometimes. Thank you for listening to my story. Remember, true family, whether blood or chosen, supports your growth rather than demanding your sacrifice. Wishing you the courage to build a life where love doesn't come with conditions.